All right, class, we're gonna go ahead and start our first chapter. This is Migration West, okay? Again, this is the story of how America moved out west. Now, when you think west, you probably think California, and some of that's gonna be covered here. But the Wild West was not California for the main part. It was mostly this area, the Great Plains, okay? So when they say Wild West, that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about Oregon and Washington and Idaho and all that stuff for the most part, okay? So the way my class works for the lectures here, for the chapters, we have green and we have yellow, okay? And I've already explained this to you in class. The green is the question. The yellow is the answer. Everything else is extra information that makes the green and yellow richer and makes it make more sense, okay? So, MC1, which means multiple choice question number 1. Great Plains location. The Great Plains is an immense grassland which stretches from the middle of America to the Rocky Mountains. You see this demonstrated in this map here. So, guess what the first question of the test is? Where are the Great Plains? You see where the answer is? It's in yellow, okay? Things will be like this all year long. So if you get your notes, it should be a series of here's the question, here's the answer. Here's the question, here's the answer. It's very easy to pass this class. The only reason you won't pass it is if you're too lazy to do the work, okay? I promise you, I'll teach you everything you need to know and it'll be fine. Just pay attention. All right, so on the Great Plains, before we got here, there were millions of people already living there, many tribes. And these tribes of Indians were farmers at the time. But whenever white people from Europe showed up, mainly Spain, they brought a new creature that nobody had ever seen before in the Americas for a long time, the horse. And it changed the Great Plains forever. So the Spanish brought horses to the Indians, and later on in the 1700s, those Indians got guns. So instead of sitting there and plowing up fields and planting crops and gathering, what they did instead is they hopped on a horse and shot a buffalo, and then everybody in the tribe got to eat that night. And by the way, at one time in America, there were 66 million buffalo on the Great Plains. So it's not like today where you go out and try to find a deer and you have to wait for 3 or 4 days before you actually shoot one, okay? They were literally everywhere. They blanketed the Great Plains in buffalo. All right, so we see how this changed their way of life. All right, what did they use the buffalo for? That's the next thing, okay? Everything. And this is only the Plains Indians, okay? I don't want you to think that people in Louisiana, the Indians from Louisiana, were riding around the bayou shooting buffalo. This is not how it works. It's only the Great Plains, okay? So what did they use it for? They provided food, shelter, and weapons. You see a chart here of all the things that they used to make the buffalo, okay? They would take the bones and make weapons with it. They would take the skin and make their clothes and teepees. They would even use certain parts of the buffalo to make water bags and things like that. It's a certain part of the male buffalo anatomy, which I am not going to explain to you. Just think about it for a second. Anyway, one of the interesting ways that the Indians on the plains would hunt buffalo is they would actually find a cliff that was close to the buffalo herd, and then they would spook the buffalo into a stampede. And you can imagine 20 or 30 Native Americans running the buffalo and scaring them, and then the buffalo would run right off of a cliff. And the Indians would kill several hundred at a time that way, okay? And they would go down and they would have meat for months and months and have enough, buffalo leather to make all their stuff. So that's one method for doing it, okay? All right, so Plains Indians lived in what's called a communal setting. Now, commune is the root word of communal, which is also the root word of communism, which I taught you in the basic American history vocabulary. Communal setting here means everybody works together, everybody gets along, and everybody shares, okay? But this is done on a much smaller scale for the Native Americans. It's not a national government, so it actually worked for them for the most part. All right, the Plains Indians lived in a communal setting. The tribe owned the land instead of individuals. Indians had no idea of a concept of this is my land. You know, when you go home to your house, to your property. They didn't have that concept. The whole tribe owned the land, and even that's a little strong. To them, the whole tribe took care of the land for the gods. Okay, that's their beliefs. Leadership was based on need, chosen by a tribal council. For example, they had war chiefs and hunting chiefs. Okay, so if a Native American tribe wanted to go to war, the tribal council would get together, the oldest members usually, and they would choose the best warrior and commander in the tribe. And he is the war chief. However, if they were going hunting, they don't need a war chief to go hunting. They need the best hunter. So the tribe would choose the best hunter, and he is now the hunting chief. And they also had several other types of chiefs, okay? The teepee moving chief, for instance, okay? Anything they needed to do, they had a chief for. And through that method, they had several chiefs in one tribe. There was no great chief for the most part. Now, y'all, I'm generalizing here. I'm talking about dozens of different tribes. So it didn't exactly work like this for every tribe, okay? This is a generalization about Plains Native Americans or Plains Indians. All right, most of their religions are what's called animistic religions, okay? So they believe powerful spirits control the natural world. So the Indians literally believed that the earth, the ground itself was a god, that the sky was a god, that the trees were a god. If you've ever watched Pocahontas, the cartoon from Disney, and you see her running through the forest singing about the spirit in the wind and the spirit in the trees, that's what she's talking about, okay? So they didn't believe in one God, okay? That's monotheism, like Christians. They believed in many gods, and they protected the land that the gods gave them. Now, this caused some problems later on whenever they saw white settlers coming in and chopping down their trees to make houses. Because who did the Native Americans believe lived in the tree? They believed the tree was a god. So when the white man comes in to chop down a tree, it's almost like the white man is coming to kill their gods. And that was one of the big things that they actually had a lot of problems with. All right, I'll see you in the next video, okay?